Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So tonight, I figured I'm going to do some PR review, answer some questions, go through some issues, answer any other questions that people have. Basically, it's been a long day, and I'm looking for a chill night. Coding is my relaxation activity, so we're gonna write a little code, solve some problems, do some debugging, have some fun. We'll go with that. And then we will circle back around to the brain teaser towards the end for anybody interested. Also, small amount of shameless self promotion time. Hang on. I wasn't actually prepped to do shameless self promotion, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. For anybody not following me on YouTube, link right below me. I started putting out some videos, specifically shorter content ones around some of the brain teaser ones. So if people are interested in this, pause, don't want to listen to myself. As excited as this is big me, little me. Um, there's the intro one. The description here has the full playlist. I'm going to start adding more to these as we go. The other thing that is linked in here, stop autoplay, you are really annoying, is the GitHub repo. So I've had a bunch of brain teasers. Either I've compiled or found or people have sent them to me over the years. And I am starting to catalog them and put them in a single place where other people can play with them too. So if you are interested, you want the list, you're looking for either the brain teasers one here or the spot the bug. So the big difference between these is brain teasers probably require you to do a little bit of typing, a little bit of code exploration to do something, whereas spot the bug, you could theoretically do them in just the browser if you wanted to go that route. Uh, Sometimes there's going to be a unit test or similar to go along with them to validate your solution, but at the end of the day, it really is just about reading code and making sure that your mental processing of the code actually matches what's happening. And oftentimes there is something slightly devious afoot. I say it in the intro too. Don't take the code that you see in this repo as a good idea. Oftentimes, good coding practices mitigate a lot of these issues. So don't do bad things, and bad things will not happen. Okay, so step one. There is a long chat between Nikolai and I, going back and forth along this padding issue. So to quickly summarize the sum total of the problem, this all came about because there was a couple issues that got logged, because people would go through and set padding on one of the text box templates. And the unfortunate part is when you set a property on a control, the control can choose to just ignore the property. So in WPF, the UI elements for a control are called its template. And that even though a control like a text box may have a padding property, if nothing in the template consumes that property, the property effectively doesn't do anything. So even though you may set it, if nothing uses it, it doesn't matter that you set it. And that was fundamentally the issue here. Is we ran into a bunch of issues back and forth. The problem being is this starts to get a little weird, and especially since we've got like a text box view margin attached property or similar. So some of these things start to get a little funky, and I like this the demo that Nikolai put together here, kind of showing the behavior of the various text boxes and what should happen. Right? Like, should the user change the padding? Right now, the default setup for things like padding roughly follows the material design spec. I say roughly because the material design spec is kind of generic. It was never written for WPF. It was written as this basic design language that says, here's the principles you should follow. And in some cases, they get principled enough to say, here's the size of things like your corner radius, which is good, but even though that seems really detailed, it's not exactly specific because there's a lot of cases in WPF where things come up and there isn't a right answer. So this library really does two things. One, it tries to follow the material design spec as best it can. When there's not clear guidance there, we tend to fall back to what is the default WPF behavior. And if that still doesn't clear up the confusion, then we take a best guess because at a certain point there's like, I don't know, there's we get to decide, I guess. So And sometimes we put something in and users come back and go, no, that's horrible. It's, okay, fair enough. So I want to take a look at this PR here and just work through it. So so there was a couple comments in here. Yeah. So Nikolai had commented that he already knows how to fix the misalignments. Probably doesn't have it done by now. Not surprising. Like, bear in mind, everybody who works on this project, this is basically volunteer. So they're dead when people ask, when's the next release coming? It's my answer is usually whenever it's ready, or whenever I decide it's ready, because yeah, even though I have a stream every week where I tend to work on this, that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting the same number of hours every week or that kind of thing. So when it's ready, that's when we ship. So, side story. I used to work for an employer, and when I got hired on, I was hired on because they were getting ready to produce this new desktop app. We were putting in a bunch of features, and I asked, so what's the release date for this new app? And they're like, when it's done. And I went, what? I had come from such a strong background of here's the date. You got to get everything in by this date, and the date's the most important thing. It was very weird to work for a company that took the opposite approach of we're not, scope is the most important thing. We want to make sure it has all of these features. We ship when the features are done. Okay. It was very refreshing to work in that kind of environment because it was never high stress. The only debate came whether, is that feature going to take too long? Should that maybe go into the next version? That was the only discussion. It was awesome. Love that place. Okay. Yeah, so specifically calling into the assessment of text field text box view margin should only be used to do the content host or similar, not the hints validation. Um, the fact that Nikolai thinks it's the right approach. Nikolai is pretty smart. He usually lands on the right answer. So, helper and validation. Yeah, horizontal content alignment. So, Nikolai, since I know you tend to watch these recordings, on the note of the content alignment, the other case that is always sitting in the back of my mind that I often forget about is flow direction, because most of the time we always think flow direction is left to right. However, some places it gets set to right to left, and that is usually the same case as horizontal content alignment right, but we've got a lot of cases where I know our templates don't handle it and it just doesn't work right. So, yeah. Yeah. So that could be fun. But let's take a look. Let's take a look. There's not a lot here. There's not a lot here, and we may check it out and run it. You know what? Let's actually start with checking it out and running it. Let's see. 3086. So we come here, get cracking. Let's see. Collapse that. Pull request 3086. I would like to check this out. Could not find ref. Okay, this is the bug. Ugh. This bothers me because I am clearly in this state. And I had reported this to get Kraken, and they came back and weren't able to reproduce. And sorry, I'm checking the logs real quick to see if there's anything else in here. And then I tried to recreate it on another project, just going from scratch, and my reproduction steps didn't work. And I then dropped the ball and forgot to do it. So if you run into this, effectively the problem is because I've got the remote hidden. And I think the steps might involve add the remote, hide the remote, then do the PR with the remote, then add the commits so that this doesn't show up. I think that might be the kicker. So I need to add additional steps into my reproduction things and find it, because it's clearly possible. I know it's possible. I just demoed it. And for reference, I am on version 9.1.1. I feel like I'm missing something. Like there was something I was meaning to announce of coming up, and I don't remember what it was. I really should have taken a note. I had this mental thing earlier today where I was going through the items that I wanted to make sure I talked about, and then I completely spaced them. That's fun. Okay, so take a look. So let's, because I want to fire this up and see, because again, the whole point here is all around this padding of what should happen. What should the text box look like when there is padding applied to it? Okay, and fields line up. So this is a wonderful little guy here. Okay, so validation error. Let's see. Helper. And there's the hints. So that works. Vertical padding. That doesn't look bad. That looks like roughly what I would expect. All right, just want to move that along a little bit. I mean, it's obviously a little weird just with this layout. So when you have the helper text, or I should say the hint that floats, and then the error text on top of it, that's definitely awkward, but I mean, that's only due to how we've laid this out. But behavior-wise, that looks pretty much like I would expect. So let's take a look at this. This is just the demo app bits. Got it. Don't care. Smart hint. Don't care. Okay. This is also. Let's just quickly look. I'm only noticing this because this is doing a bunch of code behind stuff for like find visual child. Oh, this is just so it can get in and do the oh, that's clever. So it's actually somewhat difficult. The fact that I was able to just type in this error and have a validation error show up. It's actually somewhat difficult to have that work. So it's actually kind of nice that that's in here. Oftentimes this API is not something that people even know exists. And they often do things with like weird binding validation stuff to make it work, but that works rather well. Because you'll note to mark something invalid or to clear it, you actually have to have the binding and the error. Another common approach is like the data error info path to force things into that case. Binding expression, getting the appropriate binding based upon the target type. Great, great, great. Find visual child. I'm surprised we needed this in the demo app. Let me look. I thought we had this in the main app, but it may be um but it may be internal, and that could be why it's yeah. That's find child. Yeah, okay. Got it. Yeah, so we have it, it's just internal, which is why the demo app can't touch it. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Custom padding converter. Great. So there is a clever trick, and have we revved the library up for C# 11 yet? Ba, ba, ba. Where's my Lang version? Probably in props. Lang version 11. Okay, I'm gonna show this because this is kind of cool. That was, what was the name of this guy? So custom padding converter. There's a new thing in C#11. It's called list pattern matching. And I think I briefly demoed this on a prior stream in C#11. So there's a prior stream where I went through the various features in C#11, but this list pattern is it. So if anybody's interested in looking at it, there's let's see, bring the link up so it doesn't force you to English. There you are. But there's a clever trick, because oftentimes in these multi-value converters, you take in an arbitrary array, and the first step in most multi-value converters is to pretty much check the elements of the array to make sure that they are the types you expect. That's just how it goes. So this value converter is just straight up casting and saying, you know what, we're doing the thing, and we're just gonna go. But there's another way of doing this where you use the list pattern matching. So you go where values is, and then square braces for the list pattern match, and then we look at each element in the array. Hey, Justin Bieber. So the first one would be a thickness. Next one would be a bool. Next one would be a non-nullable thickness, and that's it. And then what we do here is we call this default padding. Apply. Just going to copy and paste because typing is hard for me. And then custom padding goes here. Oop. Like that. And then we do this. And then what we do is we go here. Well, we can actually, so you stop your whining. It's only unhappy because we've got the same value declared down below. Thickness is a type which is not valid in the current context. Huh? Yes. What is your problem? Do I not have... Oh, one, I'm debugging. That's not helping my case. Oh, No. No. I should have access to this. What do you bet I have to do this maneuver? There shouldn't be anything... Why have my syntax wrong? Let's see, pattern matching. Nope. Collection is square brace. Oh, it's the nullability that it doesn't like. Oh. Oh, because it doesn't handle null. Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. So we're going to do this. Okay. And then we're going to go and, let's see. Apply custom padding. Or actually, maybe we'll do the apply custom padding. So we'll do here. If apply custom padding, right? So we'll do the true case. Return custom padding. And then the else case is default padding or dependency property unset value. Return default padding as thickness, dependency property unset value. You can discard values or include or etc. Yeah, the one, what I really want to do is this, and I'm not entirely clear why it's unhappy about that. Because I realize in this case thickness is a struct, and so I'm doing a nullable struct. But I don't understand why I can't list pattern match into that. Because that's really what I want. So in this case, I'm just going var, which is effectively object, which says I don't care. Let's not stress about it right now. And then yeah, could this be a new brain teaser? It probably should be, and some of these newer features do lend themselves well to brain teasers. So here is if anybody's late to the party. There is the current brain teaser that's there, and actually, what I will do is I will. This is the best part about having my own repo for these now. I can just link to them. Brain teasers. And this one, if people recall, so it is long class name. So there's tonight's brain teaser for anybody interested. But the whole point of going through, I'm not going to leave this code in here, but for anybody interested, if you're doing a multi-value converter, list pattern matching is awesome. Because it lets you, when I first saw the list pattern match, even though it supports things like being able to say, oh, any number of characters at the beginning, or any number of I shouldn't say characters, any number of items in the array at the beginning, or you can do the ... at the end either. Like you can kind of do arbitrary length, but at the end of the day, when you're doing list pattern matching, it's because you expect to find something specific at some index in the array. Hey, Toxic Stacy, how's it going? So list pattern matching, awesome for multi-value converters, because the vast majority of the time, multi-value converters, you have a known number of elements in the array, and you have a specific type of each element in the array that you're expecting. Almost by definition. It's really hard. Because of the way you declare multi-bindings, it's pretty rare. In fact, I don't know if I've ever done it, where I had an arbitrary number of items in my values array. Like there's occasionally times where I make my converter handle like a couple different number of items, but it's rare to have more than like 2 or 3 cases. I am. Sorry, Stacy, that was to your married comment. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this away because I don't wanna mess up what yes, you can. It was actually if I can get it to focus. I don't know if I can get it to focus properly. It was a custom one designed to look like a circuit board that my wife designed. Let's see. So that goes back there. And then we were going to keep looking at this. So that's all good. No, there's nothing wrong there. Yeah, it was really nice. I had done a custom one for her engagement ring, and so she took inspiration from there. Okay, so I love when I see fix me comments, because that always indicates something to look at. But I love this here. So this is a UI test, and I might just go look at this because this is kind of hard to review here. Let's look at that. Let's look at this in code. Is this one of the rings of power? Sort of, but not in that same context. Okay, so that's a long line, but whatever. It's a fix me comment. Is in play and slightly modifies the hint. So this is only here to adjust it. Got it. Okay. So this entire test rips through various styles on the text box. So you can see it's building up the style attribute based upon an incoming bit of data. So for people not familiar with this, this is a data-driven test. So X unit, you do that with a theory, and then they've got various ways of providing the parameters to your unit tests. I've heard some people say, "Oh, you can't have unit tests with parameters." No, you can, and I think all of the big unit test frameworks support it. The limitless power of WPF Marble. So let's see. Sets the style. If padding comes in with a non-null value, it sets a padding. Otherwise, it does string empty. And then it slaps those things into here. And then away we go there, which is great. Pulls the elements out, verifies the size. I love everything about this. So the get coordinates is just the way in XAML tests to pull back the coordinates. It comes back as a rect for for where each element was located. And then content host coordinates left minus hit coordinates left, or hint and helper text. Respects padding. Beautiful. This is gold. I absolutely, because too often this material design project has not is not done well with checking for bugs before release, and that's largely on me. But that was the whole point of this XAML test, so that we could actually deal with this. And I don't actually mind this tolerance. This isn't that big. Like 1.5 is pretty small. Like most of the outside of people who do like the pixel rulers on their screen, that's one of those things that it's going to be really hard for anyone to visually see. Especially since we're talking about the position of the hint and the air viewer coordinates. That text is already of a tiny font to begin with. A pixel shift is probably not even going to be noticeable to most people. Maybe I'm biased because I've got bad eyesight, but whatever. Okay, so there's those tests. Those look perfect. Thickness clone converter. Yeah. What are we doing here? Let's go look at this guy. What is this guy used for? Let's so like I can do a lot in GitHub's thing, but sometimes it's just nicer to look at it this way. Fixed left, fixed right. So this is also another good lesson for people on value converters. So oftentimes when building a value converter in WPF, you've obviously got the incoming bound value. So whatever value you bound to comes in here. You do also have a converter parameter. But sometimes people ask, well, hey, how can I pass more than one parameter? This question actually came up from a colleague a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. He was wanting to build a value converter and wanted to pass more than one parameter. And I told him, you don't. Because the API in WPF only ever allows you to pass one thing as your parameter. Now, you can change what that thing is, right? You can make your parameter be some class that has a bunch of stuff in it. But in his case, all he wanted to do was have a fixed value so that one instance of the converter used one value and another instance used another. I was like, just make a property on the converter. And that part was the surprising bit of, wait, you can do that? And the answer is absolutely. So if we go, let's hunt where this is used. Oh, interesting. This appears to be unused. I'm also noticing this shows 0 references. Is this dead code? No. There. Oh, clone edges is used. So this is actually a way you can do it. So when you declare your converter, you can't data bind these properties. So they have to be quote unquote fixed. But it does allow you to use the converter in a to reuse your converter somewhat in a variety of ways. Like in this case, it's changing the clone edges property from all to left so that when it's copying this thickness object around, because you can see it takes in a thickness, and then based upon which edges it's supposed to clone or which ones have fixed values, it goes through and copies them over and then makes a new thickness object, which this is a perfect example of a great value converter. I'm glad it's public, because I have a feeling this is something other people may end up using. I may have to actually poach this for another one. Like, this is a great example of good design. Though I might propose this could be dropped, because you don't need to initialize values to non-defaults. But again, it allows you to, by putting straight auto properties on your converters, it allows you to do things like this. And then if we look at a different instance of it, right? So I guess not all of the fixed sizes are being used. I picked on one of the ones that wasn't. But for example, three instances of this converter, because when you declare them in the resources, this is effectively calling new on your converter 3 times. So instantiate instance 1, instance 2, instance 3, give those things a key into the dictionary that they're going to be referenced by, and then clone the edges. So in this case, it's always picking on left, and then a couple of these have fixed top, fixed bottom things set on them. The other thing to note is these converters are declared inside of the control template rather than outside. I suspect that's very intentional as to not accidentally expose these things out. This one here should probably not be exposed outside. This is probably a bug. This is also the built-in WPF converter, so but beautiful. So this is a beautiful example of how to write a value converter. This is also, while we're on the topic, I'm just going to keep going. Nikolai, if you're watching, this is a perfect example of great work. So, huzzah. Enums. This is another thing I see people get wrong in C# all of the time. So there's a general principle that when you declare an enum, you don't do the following. Right? This is bad. And we'll even go through and do this. Right? And the reason this is bad is because enums are just magically named values for numbers. And I'm using the term number because you can technically change them from ints to like shorts or uints or whatever. In general, you don't need to change the backing type of an enum. Unless you have a good reason to do so, don't touch it. You'll probably only make things worse. Should the enum be enclosed in the converter? No, and I'll get to why that's important in a moment. But with enums, the thing you always have to be aware of is foo gets default, right? The default value for an enum is always 0. Okay, I'll say that again. The default value of an enum is always 0. So if you declare an enum like this, it's common to think that these are the only values your enum can have. The problem is that's valid. I can put any value I want into the enum. It just doesn't have a name anymore. So don't do that. So the best practice recommendation when you're declaring an enum, always declare a 0th member, right? And if 0 doesn't make sense for your enum, give it a name like unknown, none, invalid, something, right? That way the 0th value of an enum should have a name. I'll put it that way. And then flags just means that your values are expected to be bitwise ORed together. Or bitwise operators are expected on your enum, and the value should make sense in those cases. And then should the enum be enclosed in the converter? So no, because if you put it inside, so nested types in XAML are weird. In this case, we might actually be able to get away with it. Let me think about this. the way you end up referencing a nested class anytime you need something's type is to put a plus in front of it. So, for example, right here, this is so when we just specify left, the type converter takes over in XAML and goes, hang on, I know the type of your property. It's the enum type. I know that this name matches a name in your enum. So like when I pop IntelliSense, because it can look at the enum, it knows what it should be, right? The other way you can specify these is with a static, and then we can go with converters, and then thickness edges dot, and then I can go through and do something like this, right? So both of these end up being equivalent. The problem comes if we take this guy and, for example, I'm gonna copy this just so that so I can show them side by side. If I put a nested one in here, I'll just call it foo. The way you end up referencing this is you have to do plus foo. Oh, and then you have to compile so that it actually finds it. So another worthwhile thing to note, the XAML designer almost universally works on compiled code. So if it's not finding a type that you just wrote, do a compile and then it'll find it. Kind of annoying. And it's only annoying because what? Public enum. Oh, is it because it's not a class? Oh, it might not even get exposed. Converters. Oh, it's because I went through the wrong converter. Thickness clone converter. Why are you not finding thickness clone converter? I know you're in the namespace because you're there. Oh, thickness clone converter plus foo dot left. And this is why I don't like the nested classes, because things start to get weird. And I'm messing up on the syntax here, but generally you don't want to have a nested type exposed on your public API, especially for things like XAML. It gets ugly fast. So the fact that this is outside, I think, makes perfect sense given that it's public. If it was expected to be hidden, and because this type is exposed as a public property here, if this were made internal, then this property would have to go internal and things get weird. So I kind of like it as it sits. If we didn't want to expose the converter, we could make it internal. We've done this on a lot of converters in the past where converters are hidden from people. The problem that has come up many times is people like to be able to copy the styles wholesale into their app and then tweak. And what happens is if you copy a converter in that's internal, you can know the style that works in the library doesn't work in your app. And so you can't copy it out. So I've tried to make as many of the things that are in the XAML public as possible. There are a handful of times where I've still kept things internal because it's a very purpose-built thingy. And it's like, I don't want to take bug reports and responsibility for people tweaking something that's public when they shouldn't be touching it. So it's you still can make it work. You just then have to also copy the internal things into your project as well. So it's a pain. So it gets to be annoying, but it's not unworkable. Okay. So beautiful example of a value converter. Let's see. Template binding, horizontal alignment, use floating. That all looks as I expected, and I think this all actually lines up with what I reviewed last time. Because I've reviewed this PR now a couple of times, and I don't think a lot has changed since I looked at it before. Thickness clone edge. So there. Okay. So, and then to go back to the original question here, should only be used to manipulate part content host and similar and not hints. So I want to reply to that specifically. Quote reply. Let's see. So we're gonna do. We're gonna clear that. So pro tip: GitHub, the angle brace or alligator brace is how you do quoted replies. Believe. Let's grab this guy. Let's only using for the content host is correct. The placement of helper invalidation. So I think those can be separate PRs, but I think they should move. Well, should they? I think validation should move. Should hint move as well? Oh man, this is hard. Is there a situation where somebody would want to, for example, center align their hint or validation and not their text? Or center align their text and not their hint and validation? Is that a thing people would want? I really shouldn't. I feel like I'm teeing myself up to get more bug reports. When would you want a validation error when would you want a validation error and have it not follow? That's the question. If you horizontally align your text center, do you want your hint centered? So there's two options here. We could have the hint and the validation error follow the same content alignment. That's option one. And then it would end up following the position of the text, which makes reasonable sense. The other option is to introduce individual attached properties for them so that they could be directly manipulated. I think I'm inclined to say that they should follow the horizontal content alignment. We can always add an attached property later if somebody wants them to be disjointed. I think that's the answer. I think they should follow the alignment. Should also consider flow direction. Okay. Boom. Okay, so there's that. Okay, let's go look at some more stuff. Wow. Apparently I've gotten GitHub in a very awkward... Hey, GitHub, you got a bug. Okay, there was some discussion items I was going to look at. Let's see. So there was this discussion. And this one caught my eye. I assigned the message of an exception to the snack bar. Unfortunately, only one line is displayed, and the rest of the message is truncated, although a line break is possible. So there's a couple things going on here. One, One, so a snack bar in material design is not meant to expand in height. There's that. But the question here is how to violate that rule. That's the other thing that this library tries, a very tentative line, is sometimes people want to do things that are very reasonable, that they probably shouldn't do, but I try my best to make sure that the library allows people enough slack to hang themselves. This feels like one of those cases. So, because the knee jerk reaction is to say don't do that, but that's not overly helpful. Now, more importantly, I thought I had an example of this. We're gonna just briefly go and take a little. If we don't, we might just make one. Nope, no sample there. Let's look at the demo real quick because I had sworn there was a sample that showed a snack bar with multiple lines. Full width. And I don't remember if we... Let's see. So this is a snack bar message. Content. And this guy does show multiple bits. Huh. So let's back up and take a quick gander. Did the original poster include a version number? It does show, I mean, they were convenient enough to give me this. So do we have a way where we can plug this in easily? Let's see, message will hide. This doesn't allow me to add multiple lines. So let's change this so that I can. Example 3 in snack bar. So let's get ourselves off of this branch though and back on master. Switch back. Okay, so let's go here. That's not the demo app. Let's try this again. Demos, demo app, snack bars is under S, last I checked. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of this. Now, this is one thing that could also be improved in here as well. So when you have a bunch of lines like this, so a text block can actually support multiple lines through runs rather than a single text property. So going that route gives you a little bit more control. The only advantage of that, well, I should say only advantage, a mild advantage of that is then all of the text moves as one unit rather than being disjointed. And you can put line breaks in it and all kinds of stuff. Well, that's pretty. Let's see. This guy here, I want to do, what is it? Accepts return true. Okay. Hello world. Why don't you what is it? Max lines 10. Why are you not wrapping? Why are you not wrapping? Why am I dumb? Let's see. Vertical alignment. Steps return. Why am I blanking on this? Start the app. Did hot reload just fail me, or is that not the incantation? Thought that was the incantation. Let's see. Snack bar. Boom. Hello world. There we go. Next line. Oh, runs can get tricky with IDE code formatting though. Extra line breaks and spaces can't remember which one can get added due to auto formatting. That is fair. So depending on how you go through and add them, that is an excellent point. If you are putting things in with so generally when I'm doing text-based stuff, I prefer to keep everything inside of an attribute to avoid that problem because I assume I think this is the case that you're probably hitting. So where you do a run like this, the moment you start putting things inside of the content of things, things can get really weird in the IDE, especially if you turn on something like XAML formatter. You can get bit. The way I tend to work around it though is just not to use the content bit, because then I can still do something, line break, and then another run like this. But you are absolutely correct, and that's one of those things that I really wish would have gotten cleaned up with some XAML designer work. Is have it have it not do that. Like, I wish there was an option. Well, my pie in the sky dream is I want source generators for XAML, and analyzers for XAML. I want what C# has in XAML, because I would love to be able to write an analyzer that says, yeah, no content between element tags, right? All content goes in an all literal string content goes in an attribute. Because of that exact point, is you can get bit, because then you get people doing weird things like with like XML. What is it? There's the XML space. Yeah. You start to see crap like that in your XAML, and I start twitching. It's like, oh, no, no. Oh, twitch, that's bad. Yeah. So don't do that. But yes, you are absolutely correct. If you put content inside of your element tags, you're kind of asking for it a little bit. What bothers me is this appears to work. Okay, so that's 2 lines. Third line? So that okay, so there's the limit. This might be what I'm remembering of. There was some work done on the snack bar to limit its height. And let me just confirm. Material design component. Nope, not icons. Components. I'm really bad at this. I don't know. I don't think it's actually. I think it might. I don't know if 3 has it. So we'll check both. Let's see. There is one type of snack bar in material. Yep. Yep. So this one does not give a lot of direction. I believe they're not a switch this into dark mode option. That's disappointing. I apologize to everybody whose screens just got really bright. Snack bar banner dialog. Text label. Yeah, this line here. So this is the limitation that we implemented. And this is probably, so we implemented can contain up to 2 lines of text, but I'm noticing that this says on mobile. And I don't think we can make an argument that WPF is a mobile-based framework. So the question becomes, oh, slight transparency is allowed. That's unusual to see that, though it is with caution. a lot of the material design stuff really does not. They strongly limit opacity and strongly limit like gradients. Okay, so if an action is long, it can be displayed on a third line. So we have this, right? We bump the label down to a third line. So the question is, if somebody wants to bump up the snack bar message to contain arbitrary amounts of text, right? What do you have to do to change this sizing? So let's go with Spelunky, because this let's see, snack bar, where is, well, what is that button bound to, I guess is the question. Let's see, button, you're straight in the code behind. Okay, so this is just grab the text and queue it, and away we go. Okay, that seems very reasonable. So this looks like a perfect example to play with. So then the question becomes, what is in, I'm going to close some of this stuff up. Let's go look at snack bar and see what's there. So this would probably be a reasonable example of more or less the exact process I go through when people ask questions on the library. This is also why not all questions get answered, because this amount of work is often difficult and slows things down. What's up, Robert? Yes, lots of WPF and fun WPF. Well, who am I kidding? All WPF is fun. Just joking. Okay, so this is Smart Hint. I clicked on the wrong one. Let's try this again. So that's the action button. We don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Those are just variations on color. Snack bar message. And this is where height gets interesting. Hey, Mini4G, thank you for the sub. I appreciate it. When you break out Snoop, things are not fun. Let's be honest with the audience. Robert, you're spoiling the end. We'll get to Snoop in a minute. Okay, so this max height is likely what is constricting us. So this is snack bar message max content height. So that is, so this is on the message itself. And I'm going to go with, since I don't see a direct assignment there, I'm guessing this attached property is set in, well, one, I'm assuming it's an attached property. I'm guessing the default is taking place. 36 content max height. This is probably what is breaking our original poster. So if we go back here, because we're going to just play in the demo app and make this work. So where is the snack bar? So what we would really like to do here, let's do this. Let's see. Material design, snack bar, Oh. Snack bar, resources, style, target type, material design. Oh, come on. Just snack bar message. Thank you. Based on static resource, material design. What the heck was that? Oh, so this style does not have a key. It's implicitly typed, so we can do that. So that means our key is going to be curly brace X : type snack bar message. Boom, that. Okay. So, worth noting for people who are unfamiliar with styles, when you create a new style, oftentimes what I'll see happen is people will make a style for something in the material design library and then go, wait, I lost all the styling. It's probably because you forgot your based on. Because when you apply a new style, inheritance isn't automatic. You have to opt into inheritance. Okay, so setter property, and then we want to go after that lovely little max something or another. Content max height, this guy. And you are just a straight dependency property. So we'll just grab you. Content max height. And I think, so there's a little trick here. So when you, the default value, is you'll note this property here is being applied to the max height property of content presenter. So if we go and look at the max height property, this is not useful. I need to actually see the declaration. Let's go to, what's the easiest way to do this? Source.net. And we were inside of, framework element. So here, framework element, max height. Yeah, that one. Let's see. But I actually want the property declaration. So the important thing to note on these ones is what the default value is of the property, because we effectively would like to unset this so that there is no max height. So for me, when you look at the dependency property declaration, that's typically where you're going to find the defaults. You can also do it at runtime if you do the property.metadata, because you can get access to this and then see its default value that way as well. So you can do it in the debugger if you don't want to look it up this way. But we can see double positive infinity is what the default is. So we're just going to unset that. Or I should say, we're going to put that value back in. So static double oh, I need to do, what is this? Double positive infinity. This needs I believe, a namespace declaration added to it. So let's see, XML namespace system CLR namespace system. Boom. That should then resolve that. So static double positive infinity. F12 confirms that it resolves to the right type, so probably good. We need to close that so that it actually applies the setter. Okay, so here's the working theory. Working theory. If we apply an implicit style in the snack bar message, we can override the style being applied to the message to remove the maximum content height. That's the theory. Let's see. So question. In WPF with MVVM, when passing data to the view model, even using dependency injection, why do we propagate the object from the topmost color startup? That violates the single responsibility principle and open close principles. Why don't we instantiate directly in the needing view model? In the DI case, we can use dependency lookup instead of dependency injection. And we look up for the object we want directly in the needing class. The only drawback I can think of is the view model knows about the DI, but I think it is worth it. Oh, that is a great question. Let me circle back to that here in just a second. And then I'm going to show you a library that I wrote because of that exact thing. And it's, before I show the library, I'm just going to put a word of caution. This library is used in a production app. And I'm only halfway okay with that, because I've seen the other developers on the team misuse the library so many times. It just, it's one of those, I added great power and didn't put enough guardrails around it, and so there's that. Okay, So we'll come back to that in just a second. Let's see, line 2, line 3, line 4. Send. That did not override. So let me look at where that style is coming from real quick. As Robert indicated, once you open up Snoop, the fun begins, or something to that effect. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, and this one may be a little difficult to grab, but we're going to do it real quick. Okay, so there is snack bar, and I know if I do is active, I can just force that sucker open. Okay, it doesn't have the content anymore, obviously, but that is okay. And I would love to find the snack bar message, and I want to look at its style and know where its style came from. So style default. So why did mine not get applied? Why did mine not get applied? I would have expected an implicit style source to be handled. And we can see the style key that it was using was based on its type, which is what our style is. Well, let me confirm. Let me just confirm that I did what I think I did. Okay, so example 3. Move this up. Well, that shouldn't make a difference, right? Like it's because it knows about this style. It's right here. And it knows it is keyed on the type. This guy here, snack bar message. Is there a bug here? Shouldn't be a bug, right? This thing NQs, 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 does a bunch of stuff. Inserts, clears, start duration. Tell the spell checker to ignore that. Show next. Find snack bar, show async. This is what's triggering. Create and show. So this must be doing it. This creates the snack bar message. Sets the message property, sets the active property, and passes it up. So the short version is we can certainly do it by overriding that value, but it is not... I'm not clear why this is not resolving. Oh, is it not resolving up the tree? Ah. Okay. Sorry. One more test, and then we'll go back to that other question. Working theory. Working theory. If I move this into app.xaml, it resolves. That's the theory. If I do that, it works. I bet. What did I do? Why are you unhappy? Oh, this is another thing that bites people a lot. Don't. I brought this in and did not bring in my namespace. Can you figure it out for me? No? You're not gonna be that cool? Okay, fine. I'll go copy my namespace. I need you, and I need you. Oh, we've already got it. It's just named system. Okay. So the don't always trust your air list in Visual Studio. Your air list is often defaulted to build plus IntelliSense, which means the XAML designer might be contributing errors into here, and the XAML designer is really bad about knowing the order of things. So like one error can propagate into like 50 things. So oftentimes what I prefer to do is double check the output window to know which of the errors is actually the error triggering. Okay. Backbar. Didn't resolve. Okay, so we'll need to look at that. Okay, but let's answer the question on view model and dependency injection. So, do I have a good sample? I don't think I do, but we can go and look at things. So, cd dev. Let's just go temp. What's in here? mkdir di cd di .NET new WPF .NET new boom Explorer boom, and then you open with preview mode. Okay, so we'll go and take a quick look at this. So I realize I just did a ton of things very quickly. If anybody is interested in what the heck I just did with that template, so if you like what you see, you can find the .NET new template that I'm using right there. Directions for install, yada yada yada. Okay, so running the template, we end up with something like this. So this is a non-common way of setting up a WPF application, but it does use the I host or the generic host, as you'll see it referenced a lot, to set up your DI. So I like this template because it gives you a quick wham bam slam into doing it. But this I think somewhat starts to dive in at the point of some of the problems with the structure. So, for example, my main window here ends up taking in my view model as a constructor. The view model itself ends up taking in currently nothing, but it could have something like iMessenger, right? Just because we've got the community toolkit added in, we can do that kind of thing. Poof, some sort of service, right? And so let me go back over this question to make sure I got it right. When passing to the view model, even when using dependency injection, why do we propagate the object from the topmost caller? So in the DI case, we can use a dependency lookup instead of dependency injection. So, and I believe what you're describing as dependency lookup, I've often heard referred to as the service locator pattern. So if we take a look here, which I believe is that's not, there's a better example I've seen buried in the docs. This is not quite what I am looking for. This is closer to what I'm doing, not for what I am looking to show. I've seen it a lot with like older project templates, because there were, for a while, there was a couple of project templates floating around that really liked the service locator pattern. And it's, to be clear, it's not bad. At the end of the day, the most important feature of your app is shipping. So uh, you want to make sure that your app ships. To clarify, why don't we resolve the dependencies directly in the needing class? That is a good question. And often, so the generalized answer is that anything that you resolve inside of the class adds some amount of coupling between the two classes. And coupling isn't always bad, right? The general guidance is you want low coupling, high cohesion. But those are easy words to say, and real life usually has other things to say about it. So backing up for a quick moment, one of the key parts about doing dependency injection, and not the only reason, but one of the big reasons to use dependency injection is so that there are nice seams in your code, so that you can decouple your stuff, do easy refactors, write tests, right? The whole point of having those interfaces is to be able to segment things apart. However, if you aren't writing tests, you lose a lot of the values, right? One of the key ways, so the oftentimes what ends up happening, especially with view models or similar that live for a long time, is this list of constructor parameters gets big. And often what I prefer to use is a factory pattern rather than directly instantiate. So for example, a common pattern that I run into is, for example, you've got your main window. Maybe your main window needs to pop up a dialog to prompt the user to log in, right? So you've got a main window view model and a login view model. Your login view model has like username and password stuff on it, maybe related relay commands or whatnot. But your view model needs to show that dialog, and it needs to instantiate a dialog view model, right? Like at the end of the day, on your main window view model, the user's performed an action, like they've clicked a button, and you need to instantiate that and bring it up. So there's a couple ways to go around handling those types of cases. The factory pattern is probably my preferred approach in a lot of these cases, because adding multiple dependencies to your constructor and passing everything in gets to be unwieldy fast. And oftentimes you'll find that you're passing in parameters only so that you can pass them into something else further down the food chain, right? Like if I need to instantiate, let's make this a realish thing, right? So public class dialog view model, right? And I do, and this guy has an iMessenger, right? And we'll pretend like this guy is using the iMessenger. But the only reason main window view model needs a messenger is because down here he wants to go var, dialog gets new dialog view model, right? But he can't instantiate a view model without a messenger. So now main window view model needs to have a messenger so that he can give it to dialog view model to have a messenger, right? And so in order to get, and then every time you do this, right? So we'll just, right? We'll populate this up so that it actually compiles, right? And then heaven forbid you go through and decide that you're going to add what? Oh, so the fact that I can't spell is a problem. Got it. Right. Okay, fine. Go ahead. Make fun of my spelling. Make fun of my spelling. Yeah. I get it. I can't spell. Yeah, just passing down the dependencies. So the way I usually like to go about doing it is I usually go back to challenging the idea that main window view model needs to instantiate a dialog view model. Because typically what happens when you see this type of pattern happening is main window view model doesn't actually need to instantiate a dialog view model. It needs a dialog view model to do its work, but it doesn't actually need to instantiate it. It just needs the ability to create one. It doesn't necessarily need it doesn't necessarily need the dependencies for dialog view model, because this, like you were saying, 40 plus parameters just to pass down, that gets incredibly messy, right? And I would strongly advocate that the actual dependency of main window view model is actually more a dialog view model factory. So there's a couple ways to go about doing this. I'm going to do this the long way first, and then I'll show you the shorthand, because the long way is easier, right? So public interface dialog factory, right? And then something like dialog view model create, right? So we do this, public class dialog factory dialog factory implement interface, and now this guy has to create the new dialog view model, and he needs a messenger, right? So this is going to be a little subtle, but I think it'll get the point. Let's see, messenger. So now this guy really only needs an dialog factory. And then this becomes dialog factory. Oh, hush now. Hush now. You're fine. Figured out? Oh, thank you, autocode. And then down here, this really just becomes dialog factory create. Right? So this now separates the idea of who actually needs to create the view model. And now if dialog view model gains dependencies, the factory needs to care about those dependencies. But those dependencies then don't spiral up through your object food chain all the way up, right? It isolates the thing down. The problem being is that these types of one-liner factories get really bloody common. So this is the kind of the generalized pattern. And sometimes you even need to you want to have a situation where you're like, well, I want most of my parameters to come from DI, but then I want to pass through like an extra string or some data object, right? That my view model needs for initialization. In those cases, I like writing real factories. They're great. They're awesome. Well, great. They're awesome. They're overhead. Let's be clear. But they at least then separate and can make. They give you a DI way of putting yourself between the constructor and the thing that you're constructing, right? So they're the way of adding that interface, because a constructor is a static call, right? People don't often think about constructors as being static methods, but that's all they are. They are static methods. So, and static is tight coupling. Now, the cheater way to go about doing this, rather than an dialog factory, and I'll put this along the side, is you do something like this, and you leverage a func. Right? So you do this, and then this becomes, var dialog2 gets dialog factory 2, and you can actually just do paren, or if you want, you can go full on invoke, right? Which sometimes you need to do if that's nullable. Null propagation is the thing. In this case, it's not nullable, whatever. And then what you do in your DI container, and this is kind of getting back to the suggestion that you had posted earlier, is you can actually do something like services add singleton func of dialog view model, right? And then this becomes, let's see, services, and we do svc dot get required service dialog view model. So rather than going through the effort, and I realize I didn't actually register the other factory, so we'll do that here real quick. Just comparing apples to apples. Add singleton dialog factory, right? Boom. We'll make them both resolve. So for the simplistic case for the factory pattern, you can register up a func in your DI container instead. And typically your func will be registered as a singleton because you don't need multiple instances of the func itself. What's actually then interesting is you can have your func capture the service provider, and maybe this is better to, let's rename this service provider. Effectively, service provider in this case is your DI container, right? If you're using a different, something other than the Microsoft dependency injection abstractions, plug in, insert your service or your DI container here. But you can have the func reference your DI container and just call get required service back on that. The other thing you can do is your factory, if it really does need to do a lot of dynamic stuff, you could theoretically have this thing be I service provider, right? And get it in there. How to invoke this func? Good question. So this is the registration. So 3 parts to that. 1, you register the func in your DI container. 2, you make the func a dependency of something resolved by your DI container. In this case, main window view model is resolved by the DI container, so it will see this type. Right? There's no interfaces here. This is just straight up delegate types. So, but it will see a func of a func that returns dialog view model, and it'll shove it into this factory. And then down here, you can actually take the func and just do 2 parens on the end of it. The other thing you can do rather than the 2 parens is call the invoke method. Some people prefer that because it gives you an opportunity to use the null propagation operator, or because they find it to be more clear rather than just seeing 2 parens slapped on a property going, oh, what? That's weird. Yeah, it works. They both do the same thing. But then when you invoke this, it's going to call back to that func and create a new instance. So worth noting though, when you end up doing it like this, so depending on what you put in this func, oh yeah, no problem, Justin Bieber. Depending on what you put in this func, we've registered a singleton func, a singleton factory that's effectively going to return probably transient, because we haven't registered the dialog view model, but in my hypothetical example, I probably want dialog view model as transient, probably. But again, there's that separation between what should the lifetime be. And for very simple cases like this, which I think this is the most common case I run into, is I've got a view model. It needs to instantiate another view model. I don't want to be passing dependencies all the way from the top all the way down. I want to break it. And again, it starts with the idea of challenging, does your view model actually need to call new insert other type here? Right? There are cases where maybe the factory pattern is not the right solution. But I think the first question to answer is, should my class be calling the constructor of this other thing? That's the first question to answer, is should it be doing that? If the answer is, well, maybe not, then I think the factory pattern is definitely worth looking at. Now, again, there could be cases where it's like, no, I really need to be the one calling new. It really needs to be done here for whatever reason, right? If those are the cases, you might be stuck going through and doing this dialogue. Yeah, new is glue. That is absolutely true. Okay, now for the promised bad solution. Now, bear in mind, the author of this library is telling you it's a bad solution. So lots of disclaimers. AutoDI. So anybody who wants to look at it, feel free. Like I said, it isn't a production app. I keep poking at it because it is set a little bit older. I think latest preview NuGets have support for Net 7. The old one works. There's nothing wrong with it. So a couple things to be aware of with this library. This library does IL weaving of your assemblies to do magic. So just to be clear, this thing is going to muck with the IL of your assembly post-compile to do magic. Okay, now that we've got all the scary things out of the way, where is... I think the quick start's probably good enough. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to declare your classes like this. So my example class. So this would be the equivalent of like that dialogue view model that we were doing. And rather than having a hard dependency, that's a parameter that you need to pass in, you do something crazy where you use this AutoDI dependency attribute, and you make the parameter optional, right? And you'll note the very first line in here checks that optional parameter for null. Okay? This then allows you to do, oh, I guess I didn't show it here. That's a little disappointing. This then allows you to go new my example class, not pass in a parameter at the call site, which will get a default of null. But by the time you get to this line, service will be populated for you. So what this library is doing is it looks for this dependency attribute, and somewhere between this closing paren and this opening curly brace, it executes some extra code that goes and looks this up from your DI container. Yeah, magic. Because believe me, the number of people have been confused at this library because it goes, hang on, somehow this was null, and then I got to my opening curly brace and it wasn't null anymore. It's like, correct. There's the magic. Again, works by absolute magic. It does IL manipulation to make it all work. It also will do IL manipulation to... this is some scary magic. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I should warn people. The magic gets worse. It gets really bad. It also has the ability to be used straight up on private properties, private read-only properties. Because it's injecting code into the constructor to do the resolution, it has full access to that. No problem. Away we go. And then it's able to, you can then go through and resolve things and make it work. It will also, let's see. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, so there's a bunch of configuration that can be set up on this. One of the other more interesting ones that it will do is if you leave it alone and just turn it loose, it will go through and by default, it will generate all your DI registrations for you. So your setup case, where you usually do a bunch of registrations, yeah, you don't have to do those anymore. It just generates them all at compile time. Done. Yeah, so it doesn't work for things. So you may still have to add additional registrations, but it may not be there. It's also worth noting, I first wrote this. I started writing this before the Microsoft DI abstractions came out. And by the time I got to a V1 release, the abstractions library had come out. So there's a little bit of that. But so worth noting, I started this before that actually came out. So some of the stuff in here is because there, at the time I started writing this, it was back when there was a bunch of debate about what DI container was best. And you'd have the flame wars between Autofact, Ninject, Rhino, whatever, of people going crazy. And I didn't like any of them. Personally, I think the Microsoft dependency injection abstractions has won. Like, you should use that. If you want a different DI container backing it, do that. But in general, the Microsoft one, it's more or less won the DI wars because people pick Microsoft by default for no other reason. But the registrations, if it sees an interface and sees a single implementing class, registers a singleton. Done. If it sees a class, it'll register that class to itself. I believe is either scoped or transient. I'd have to look at the defaults. But there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So this is the bad library of being able to do it. Now, the use case where this library is actually really helpful, specifically in a WPF app. So I built, let's see, sorry. I wish I could hang around for the full stream. Glad I finally got a chance to get part of it. I'll be looking in the chat from time to time. Take it easy. Hey, no problem, Mini4G. Feel free. The recordings also go up on my YouTube as well if you want to catch them. They go up 3 or 4 days after they go out because Twitch has a thing about not posting content within like 72 hours or something like that. But the recordings all do eventually make it out, or you can catch them sooner on Twitch. So this template that I put together for using the generic host for DI for registration works great. This is like my personal, now people have opinions about how to structure your app. This is Kevin's personal opinion of the best way to structure a WPF app. Feedback welcome. The problem being with this pattern, because this does a great job of being able to DI inject your data context into your windows, into your view models, all of that jazz. Where this will fall apart is if you end up needing a DI registered service in, say, a markup extension or a value converter. You no longer have an easy way of reaching in and grabbing those. Right? There is no easy static resolution, look the thing up, because you kind of want that. And because the framework doesn't give you those injection points, because remember, WPF is old. Like, it is a fairly old framework. I'm trying to remember when it came out. 2003, I think, give or take. So we're coming up on two decades. Because there's no easy way of doing that, auto DI can be really, really handy. The other thing that it does is it will only replace your dependencies if it sees a null value being passed in. So it makes for really easy unit testing, because now if I want to test my example class, I can pass in any iService mock or any other instance, and as long as it's non-null, auto DI goes hands off and says, no, I'm not going to touch it. I'll only try to do DI resolution if I see a null value coming in. If there's a null value coming in, yeah, I'm going to try. But if you give me something else, I'll go hands off. So it gives you a nice, easy way to still inject, because there is an if condition there. I thought in one of my things I had a let's see. I may have broken some of this in some of my release notes. I was doing a bunch of stuff and I may have ended up breaking some of my documentation. I haven't touched this in a couple months and I need to circle back to it. Because inside of it, what it ends up doing is if service is null, register DI resolve, otherwise use passed in instance, which is then how this ends up working. It does mean if you have nullable reference types turned on, you have to do null bang on the end of this, which looks weirder than all get out. Believe me, like, it's confusing and ugly. I do want to update this with some source generator magic because it'd be cool. But you can also do this on local functions, which gets real weird, let me tell you. You probably shouldn't do that. Okay. That was a very long answer. Let me know if that fully answered your question from earlier. What is it? Yeah, great thing. I did a project where all classes resolve directly the object it needs from the DI service. I wrap the DI service with a factory so I can change it in the future. Did I do a bad thing? No, that's not horrible. And I've seen people wrap up their DI container in like a static class as well because they need access to it for different places. So I'll put it this way. People who are purists will probably say, yes, you did a bad thing and you should have refactored your code. My opinion is if you shipped your app and it was able to work appropriately, you couldn't have been that far off. Shipping is the most important feature, followed closely by shipping without bugs. So as long as you're able to continue to iterate on the code, and mitigate bugs, it can't be that bad, right? At the end of the day, the simplest thing that gets the job done is probably good enough. Probably. Um, it, I only put that little caveat on the end is because one of the only things that remains constant is your project is probably going to need to change over time. Any project that's under active development and not just like in archive bug fix mode should be optimized for change. And that's where a lot of the design patterns come into play is they try to optimize for like encapsulation so that you can when you need to add a new feature, you change it in just that one spot and it doesn't, sprawl to the entire application. Um, but no, I don't think you did a bad thing at all. And wrapping up the DI container in a little factory um, is sort of the same thing that I'm showing here, right? Like this guy could take in an iService provider and do the creates, right? That's not that bad. And like we've done this as well for like JSON deserialization, right? If you're using Newtonsoft, you can wire Newtonsoft up so that you can serialize and deserialize classes that go through your DI container. That way, if your class has a DI dependency, Newtonsoft can get that resolved. That's a beautiful example of when you probably pass in a service provider, because I'm trying to remember the class inside of the Newtonsoft.json library. It's like a resolver or similar, but you can feed it a custom creation delegate, and you can point that at a DI container, and it's effectively a factory pattern for deserialization to be able to populate it. So hopefully that's all useful. Okay, now to figure out why the heck my snack bar isn't working. Because this didn't work either. And I'm a little surprised. Because I sort of thought, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start playing around. Setter, property, background, value, red. Right? We're gonna make this ugly for a moment. And then we're gonna go here. Because I want to confirm that I'm actually getting what I expect. Value, and then obviously fuchsia, because fuchsia is one of the ugliest colors you can pick. Actually, I make a good point. Second ugliest, lime, or I'm sorry, green. No, it's lime is the one that's full green channel, right? Yeah. Boom. Okay. I have a feeling what I am about to see is a lot of lime and not a lot of fuchsia. And I'm a little confused by that because I would have expected this snack bar instance to look up it. Oh, wait a minute. That one didn't. That one just disregarded. Yeah, so that means the background property is not being bound. That means background isn't actually being set on any of these. Okay, fine. Text, so this is a perfect example of what I was mentioning earlier, right? I set the background property on the snack bar message, right? But if nothing inside of the template leverages this property is effectively meaningless. So yeah, the snack bar itself is setting a background, which is what is where we're probably getting that lighter color. But this guy, nah, not a thing. Okay, so we're gonna use text element foreground because that will get used, because this this property here, I know inherits all the way down to text elements, and I know we're going to get a text element down there. So we're going to do that. Then we're going to relaunch. So that snack bar on the first screen, I'm fully expecting its text to be lime and completely unreadable. That's the success case right now. Ugly color and completely unreadable is success. Ooh, fuchsia. That means my local one has taken over. Okay. Okay. See, and these ones down here, right? Okay, so this is working, but it is still not. Okay, so I resolved, but it didn't work. Okay, so now the next question. Can I put this back inside? Because I'd prefer to put this inside my snack bar in my demo app down here. The example 3 here. I want to put it here. Right, so I want it to only apply to this one snack bar. All right, putting things at the app level always. Oh, yeah. Right. Doesn't work for everybody. So I just want to make sure. Shrink you up, designer. I don't want to look at you right now. I just want to make sure this works here. That one, yeah, lime is expected because I'm no longer overriding it globally. But I am overriding it here. Send. Okay, good. Okay, so it is resolving my style. But when I set the property to positive infinity, it did not do what I expected. So let's figure out what the magical incantation is. So this, Control Shift. So for people who aren't familiar with this, this is the Snoop app. If you just Google for Snoop WPF GitHub, you will find the GitHub repo for it, and you can download the installer from their releases page. It is wonderful. It is awesome. It is, in my opinion, a required piece of software for anyone doing WPF development. With that said, Microsoft has gotten a little better with the Visual Studio, like Live Visual Tree and whatnot. The amount of stuff in Snoop is just so much more. Okay, so there's that. There's that. So I have a snack bar message. Now I want to look at the content max height is still set to 36. Show me foreground. Did you ever make any videos on Snoop here or on YouTube? I probably should. So I've done a few. So there's content about Snoop on several of my YouTube videos where I've dived into how to use it. So pro tip, if we go here, we go GitHub. Don't scare me, GitHub. So here's the link to the repo. But so I cheat and I keep the subtitle tracks of all of my YouTube videos in a GitHub repo. And these markdown files are hyperlinked back into the timestamp on the YouTube video. And so you can technically come in here and do things like hunt content about Snoop and then find everywhere where I've talked about Snoop. But I don't know if I don't think I've made a phrase. I know I haven't made any dedicated videos on Snoop, and I probably should. I've started to do some more short form content on YouTube. So a Snoop video is almost certainly in order. Let's see, Cheeto Vendor. How long have you been a dev? That is a great question. Got to do math here real quick. Let's see. I think I got my first full-time job in I think it's been close to, well, hang on, because I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary with my current employer. I think that's this year. And so it's probably young WPF video wants to be okay. Okay. Request submitted. I will look at doing some Snoop specific videos. Um I think I've been a developer close to probably like 18, 19 years. Has it been that long? 16? 15. Wait, how old am I? I think I'm coming up on 16 years. I think. But math is hard, and I don't know if I've had enough Mountain Dew yet tonight to do math in double digits. I only got a math minor at university, which means I can only count on one hand. I'm not allowed to use the other hand. Okay, so uh a long time still in school. So the one thing I will say for people still in school, there's this idea in a lot of fields that the longer somebody's doing it, the better they are. Um, my personal experience is that years of experience does not matter that much in this industry. It is a good starting point, but I have seen way too many developers that have 10, 20 years experience that are not much better than college grads, right? That maybe only have a few years of experience, right? So the because technology moves along so quickly, people who don't learn quickly get left behind, which uh, from somebody new coming out of school coming into the field, that should be really encouraging because it means you don't have to work for 20, 30 years to try to get yourself on the level of where all the seniors are at, right? The technology moves really quick, so it's actually not that uncommon to see people who are fairly young doing moving up fairly quickly, um, especially those who like learning. Like the ones who enjoy learning and dive into stuff can jump ahead really quick. uh, oh, you're a real dungeon master programmer. So for all the newbies out there coming into it, just know that you may not have as far to go to catch up to other developers as you might think. Now, there's some skills that are a little more timeless, right? Things like networking knowledge, right? TCP/IP hasn't changed in decades. Like people who understand networking concepts, they could have learned them back in the 80s and it's still applicable today, right? There's not a lot of change that has occurred in there. Like some things move really slow. Things like basic design patterns and architecture, a lot of that has held pretty steady. There's some newer stuff that evolves over time, especially as newer language features come out, like the way people used to optimize ANSI C code, where you order all your parameters or all your locals at the beginning of your method. Don't combine your declaration assignment. Yeah, that's not really relevant in some newer languages, right? The compiler handles that stuff for you. Like compilers have advanced and gotten smarter. The programmer does a little bit less work. um oh, Bruce, 5 months, thank you. So just be aware of that with with some advances, some things are still relevant, some things aren't. But especially things like learning newer frameworks, like it can be very easy for people who are senior developers to be completely ignorant of newer stuff. I don't know everything. I enjoy learning on a constant basis, but sometimes people throw curveballs at me and go, "Hey, have you seen the latest stuff in React or Angular?" It's like, no, sorry. I can't keep up with all the new stuff. So find what you like, learn as much as you can. Yeah, we'll go with that. That'll be the words of wisdom for tonight. Okay, so it's interesting that the mess. Oh, I see. Yeah, no problem. And feel free if you're around and want to drop onto my streams. I am always happy to take questions from people. People who watch my streams a lot know that I will very easily rabbit trail off on somebody's question. And I do not mind that. I start these streams with an idea of what I'm going to work on, and then I will go where the content takes me, and we'll see where we land. There's a couple times where I'm a little more picky about what I want to work on, but yeah, most of the time, always feel free to ask questions. Questions are never bad. If nothing else, they'll make for good content in a future video. So that's there, but if I do that and grab it, I want to bump the timing on this thing. Let's see. So can I just go with snack bar or message queue? Boom, boom, boom. Let's see. Queued duplicates, queued messages. Oh, is that not a? Does the snack bar message queue not allow me to change the timing of this? Boo. It's defaulting there. That's disappointing. Okay, so in the interest of not thinking too hard, we're just going to make that 3,000 seconds. I will not check that in. Because I would like to see what that does. Oh, and well, okay, sorry. I know I did this earlier in the stream, but shameless self-promotion time. Let's see, if I press that button, it's not it. That button. If people are interested, I did start putting together a brain teasers. So there is a brain teasers playlist. Why is my new video not in the playlist? Hang on, we might need to fix this. Videos. Standby. Apparently I didn't put my new video in my own playlist, and that is an oversight on my part, and I should be smacked for this. Look at that. Yeah, it's not in the playlist. Boom. Done. Save. There it is. So if you're interested in learning some stuff, the brain teasers playlist has a lot of I've started to put a lot of C# things in there. I find it's a great way for me to learn. Like, I love when people send me little brain teasers of spot the bug or figure out why this doesn't work. A colleague sent me one earlier today, and I told him, I'm like, oh, dude, we're gonna rework it. The problem is the code he sent me is from a client's repo, and I obviously can't share that. But I'm going to do up an open source sample that demonstrates a similar problem and post it, because it was a good one. I stared at it for probably 10 minutes going, I don't see it. Where's the bug? And it bothered me. I really I hate it and love it so much. Like, I love being able to find them, and it's frustrating not seeing it. But brain teaser. Don't use Xena. Couldn't find it out. Tried though. Display name attribute. Couldn't figure it out though. Tried display name attribute. Justin Bieber, I'm not sure the question there. Specifically around your display name attribute, if you want to clarify. Okay. I want to come back here to this. I want to go here. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I want to manipulate some properties until I figure out why this thing isn't sizing the way I expect. Okay, so there. If I go to the snack bar message, I should see a max height. Okay, so my max height is currently set to infinite. So I shouldn't be limited there. Let me just dive in and make sure. Oh. there might be a max height here. If I just do 1,000 is probably big enough. So that, interesting. Oh, max height is bound. Hang on. Uh, uh, oh, couldn't figure out. Tried the display name attributes. Oh, got it. In relation to tonight's brain teaser. Ha. Lovely one. We will circle back to that one in just a moment. I will share out the link for it if people want to. If people want to try it, you are. Wow, GitHub is giving me nothing but problems tonight. Here is the link to the brain teaser. James, I've missed you. And see, this is why I can't talk about my. So even though I do DM for a D&D campaign, I always have to be careful what I say on stream because I know occasionally James, who is one of the players, will drop in and snoop. And with my luck, he'll drop in at the exact wrong or right time. Okay, so this max height binding is still landing on it. Oh! This, okay. I misread my binding. Ultimate metagaming. Okay. So I misread this content presenter binding. This is not binding to the snack bar message itself. I misread that. That says snack bar, which is different. So this actually becomes muchas easier. No thinking. We come up here, and we go here, and we go here, and we go. Let's see. So I have to namespace resolve there. I do that, and then I take this little positive infinity guy, and I go whoop, and I paste it. Okay, and then this whole thing becomes kind of meaningless, but we're going to leave it for the minute because fuchsia. Everyone loves fuchsia, or at least I love fuchsia, so we're going to go with it. That is a joke for any UI designers who are about to throw things at me. I use fuchsia. So there's a designer I work with during my day job, and I made the comment one day, I'm like, don't worry, I intentionally made the icon fuchsia because I knew it was ugly enough that you wouldn't leave it like that. Once the laughing died down, they told me they'd get me a design. Okay, so I go here. Goal! So the solution's simple. You set the following attached property on your snack bar, and it will increase your maximum height to infinite. And you can control it however you want. Wow. Okay. If I had been able to read my own code earlier, we could have saved a lot of time. Reading is hard. Okay. So let's go post a reply to this, and then we'll jump back to the brain teaser, and then I may call it for the evening. Okay. There is an attached property that you can set on the snack bar instance itself to control the maximum height of the messages. If you want to allow for any height, you can set it to double dot positive infinity, something like this. Okay. I will say, so I was working on some brain teasers earlier tonight, and I had GitHub Copilot running, and not only did it solve the brain teaser by looking at my commented code, but it finished typing the explanation of how it was working. And I went, dear heavens, Copilot, you suck. You spoil the ending for everything. Okay, so yeah, sometimes it's very difficult. That's actually a comment I've received multiple times, Justin Bieber, about attached properties. You never know where or which ones are available when. And the short answer is every attached property is available everywhere. And small asterisk next to that because they can be scoped down to only certain they only can be applied to buttons or similar. But in general, you can apply any of them anywhere. Like this one, right? Like for example, I can come down here and go grid.row, which is an attached property, and I can set it to 2. It's going to have 0 effect because I'm not inside of a grid. And so people have asked for a list of which attached properties are usable where, because attached properties in general don't have behavior associated with them. Now, that's not always true. Some attached properties, when you set them, they have like on property change things that trigger and will do stuff. But most of the time, you set an attached property and it's values that are there. The hard part with it is because attached properties can also inherit up or inherit down the tree. Sometimes an attached property may be available, but it's somewhat difficult to show. I have hopes of being able to generate documentation about at least the material design attached properties of which ones are used inside of which styles and templates, because that I think I can programmatically figure out. Within reason. Like some are going to be harder to figure out than others, but most of the time I can scan through a style or a template and tell you which attached properties are consumed by that style or template. And then obviously there's a hierarchy there where it may go up or down. Because I would love to be able to list out alongside of every style in the library which attached properties are used inside of that style. And ideally have those docs auto-generated so that as they change, it automatically puts it up. It's not a perfect solution, but I think it's probably the easiest one to do. Let's see. So I want to do, at least for the sample code, I want to do something like this. Because I think that would go a long way, at least helping people within this library. Because I can't list what every property that might be relevant, because I don't know what might be relevant. But I could at least list, given a material design style, where is it being consumed. Okay, so we'll do that. There's an answer there. Hopefully that one's helpful. And away we go. And if there's any questions on why the snack bar is set there, it is a little weird that I get why we defaulted it to 2 lines, because I remember there was a lot of debate when we added in the functionality, where is it? For the action button to move down. Because there's actually a bit of code. Where is it? We saw it earlier. Yeah. There's actually quite a bit of code to go from this 2-line message to this 2-line message with longer action text. And so it gets weird. Like it's hard to know exactly the correct size in all cases. So that's why we put the attached property, so that it could be the caller can then control it, because I don't know what people want. Okay. Brain teaser time. Brain teasers. So we were looking at the long class names. So if we go here. So this is the brain teaser for this evening. It is out on the repo. Link in the chat for anybody who does it. When I had initially posted this to my colleagues, I had a single solution in mind. And one of my colleagues came back with another solution that I hadn't considered. So the answer here, there's actually 2 answers. So just to clarify the hard part here, is the goal is to declare a class. So public class foo. right? But declare the class such that when you do type of name, the length of that name is greater than 42 characters. Now, this is obviously somewhat challenging because type of foo still has to resolve to the class, right? You can't just do, really long name because that doesn't work as foo anymore. So that's the brain teaser to go through and think on. So anybody who doesn't want spoilers, you've got about 5 seconds to pause the video before I show the solutions. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So solution 1, and this was actually the one that I had initially come up with when I wrote the brain teaser. So solution 1 requires C#11 or later. Specifically, what we are looking for is file scoped classes. So when you put the file access modifier onto a class, it makes the class only available within this file. This is different than every other C# modifier that has come before. We've never had anything that is scoped based upon individual files. The primary use case for this is like source generators that want to generate classes, but they don't want those classes that they generate exposed outside of that. What the compiler ends up doing is hashing the contents of this class and slapping on a really massive hash onto the end of this thing. So if we run this test, doc, right? Let me just put you off to the side. You can see test passes, huzzah, because of that very long hash that goes on to the end of the name, which again is only there because even though you may say file scope thing, the compiler has to enforce it. But at the end of the day, when the app is running, there still has to be a class there that works. So the compiler just enforces that no one else gets at that. But in theory, if you wanted to get this class outside of this file, you can do it via reflection. Like reflection is basically the take all the training wheels off. We're going to ride anyway. So if you want to do it that way. So, but again, requires C#11 or later because you need the file scope types. Prior to C#11 or later, you can't gain access to it. There's that. Solution 2, which I had not considered when I first wrote this, came from a colleague of mine. You can do it by declaring the type thusly. I think that's a word. We're going to use it. And then aliasing the type name. So using a using directive, you can alias a type. And most people are familiar with this because if you've got two types with the same class name, and you need to bring in both of their namespaces with using statements, you have to disambiguate which one you intend to use by doing this. But you can also use this to alias it. Like I've done this for types straight up where maybe I'm referencing a library where they've got a class that was weird. Where they've got a class that's maybe has a really common name, like I don't know, object or packet or stream or something that is often used in more than one place, and I want to disambiguate it, and so I'll say, well, no, this isn't a packet, this is library packet. That way I can give it a name that I want to use inside of my file, but then the compiler is still hip to it. So by doing this, by giving it a long name, type of still resolves foo because that's the alias here. But at runtime, when it goes and grabs the name of it, it's actually going to get the name of the class, which is going to be foo, lots of numbers following it. And once again, we'll run the test just to prove test passes, works. So those are the two known solutions. But as always with any of my brain teasers, if you find mistakes or you find additional solutions, please send them to me. I'm happy to put them in and credit you. I've left an addendums thing in the README of all of my brain teasers specifically for citing people who submit either corrections or additional solutions or that kind of thing. So, because I'm not infallible, I make mistakes. Some people don't think that, but I do. I do make mistakes, but only sometimes. Only sometimes. Okay. With that, I think we are. I'm going to wrap it up then for the night. As always, if people like the content, feel free to follow on YouTube. Like I said, I've started to do some more shorter content videos rather than just recordings of my streams. So there will probably be one coming up on Snoop, apparently, that I need to put together some Snoop related thingies to show off different areas of Snoop. That honestly is probably a playlist in and of itself, just going through all of the things. So yeah, that could be fun though. That could be really fun. Um, be a good way to go through and make sure that I've exhausted my knowledge of Snoop anyway. So expect some of those videos coming up. Each of the brain teasers, I've been recording videos for those. I'm probably going to post one out a week um, until I'm caught up, and then they'll just be ad hoc as I get new brain teasers. But I'm trying to make sure that I get those done. I think I'm going to shoot them to publish them on either like Sunday or Wednesday or something to that effect. So yeah, either subscribe or check back or whatever. Do the needful to get notified. But with that, I'll tell everyone happy coding. See y'all next time.